Hi, Michael Force here again with Rise Digital Marketing Mastery Course, lesson number 14 here. Powerful, powerful lesson here. Telling your story, how to sell with the right narrative. Stories have really been since the beginning of time. Think about as a kid when you were told stories, or even today, you're still reading books, stories, you're still watching movies, stories, you're still listening to songs, stories. Everything is weaved into some kind of story. There's an old saying in marketing that says, facts tell, stories sell. One of the key things about that is that if you can weave some kind of narrative into whatever product, service, interest, or idea that you have, and or even your own personal brand to tell your story. Like I tell my story as a former U.S. Marine that came online and the internet changed his whole life essentially by being able to create an income that he never thought was possible. And now 7-8 figures, in this day and age is amazing to be able to do on the internet. So it's a phenomenal story, and your story can come up with, we all have a story. Don't think yours isn't interesting. It is to somebody. So that's the key with marketing, is weaving your story into your own personal brand, product, service, passions, or ideas, and people will buy that story. Think about the little stories that you hear. Fortune 500 companies try to do this, where they weave an old story about the founder, and the founder started Coca-Cola because he accidentally stumbled across a recipe or whatever it may be. Those are all stories. Think about Walt Disney, so on and so forth. It's all stories that people buy people. They don't necessarily buy product, service, things like that. Yes, they have to, provide some kind of solution, but ultimately they're also buying the story. And that's incredibly powerful. So I'm going to teach you exactly how to do that here in this lesson. So let's jump into it, and I'll see you on the inside. Hello, Michael Force here again. Welcome to lesson 14 of the Rise Digital Marketing Mastery course. This is telling your story, how to sell more with the right narrative. Let's jump in here. The story is one of the most valuable business assets that you can create. Customers need a way to connect to you and your business, and your story basically provides it. The more your story involves elements that your customers experience, the better. The story is an asset, so refine it, take care of it, and develop it. Humans understand experiences and information in relationship to stories. It seems that in order to understand something, we must relate to it, to other things in a format really called a story. This allows us to see how elements are related to each other and to the whole. Minds think and process in a story form. When we don't have a story provided, we create one. We've already learned about the phenomenon called confabulation. When we're just to make up stories about what we have with ideas, why we made decisions, and why we're doing things, we also seem to always be looking for how elements fit together and trying to create a story that makes sense. I've talked to several friends and experts about this process of storytelling and why we need stories and how we do it. If you've learned anything of Werner Edwards trainings or Landmark trainings, you'll know that they have a whole thing to do in their program, where they basically show you that there's a distinction between what happens in the world and the stories we make up to explain them. And once you understand this distinction, that the story that you're making up is not actually what happened, it's just your story about it, it can create a pretty big awakening. I've had lots of discussions with my friends over the years about this, and even my wife. And she was telling me about a model that I believe Daniel Dennett uses. When he says way the mind works is it's kind of like a wall, and you're on one side of the wall, and everything else is going on the other side of the wall. And every once in a while, someone gets thrown over the wall for you to take a look at it. And if these elements come up over the wall in the form of thoughts, experiences, communication, and from other people, and so on and so forth. What we do is we weave a story together. We essentially improvise a story that makes them all make sense. Now, this is quite a feat when you think about it, because there's a lot new information coming in, and sometimes we have to recontextualize everything that's happened before within the new light of this information. This is particularly challenging with human beings and with businesses, because we like to believe that people are either good or bad, or the businesses are either good or bad. And, they always behave either a good way or a bad way. And we like to be able to characterize people as angels or demons or heroes or villains. And we could go on and on about this one. I'm sure you could see the rabbit hole. It goes very deep here. But the point is, we are constantly rewriting our stories in order to make things make sense. So we make the world make sense. We make the new information make sense in relationship to the story that we've created about it. Now, in turn, we humans are really fascinated with the backgrounds of things. We like to know where things came from. We like to understand how things came to be. This is the story of research. It's the story of science. It's the story of archaeology. It's the story of history and researchers. Look at what's happening right now to piece the whole story together. And again, when we don't have a story provided, we create one. The mind fills in the missing gaps. So what I recommend is you consciously pay attention to developing, creating your story, telling your story in a way that customers can understand, that's attractive to them, allows them to relate to you, and allows them to relate to your business. You're talking to a particular kind of strange human that only has these traits, that doesn't have all the traits that are looking at when it comes to these kind of traits. So everyone can feel like they're just talking to them. Well, the story is just another extension of what we want to tell stories, that every piece of the story the customer can relate to. Your story should touch on key emotional experiences. Key emotional experiences are the elements of stories, and they are mostly touching people. Being at a disadvantage, trying and failing, psychological or emotional drama, discovering winning formulas, achieving success when the chips are down, these are all very interesting elements that most people can relate to, and they can make for excellent elements of your conversion story. So your story should, again, touch on some of these common elements. At the beginning, it's important that you tell the story of you or someone that started out in the same situation as the customer is in now. They didn't start out in a different situation and then got there. They started out in the same situation that your customer, your prospective customer is in right now. They tried and they failed. They tried some type of solution. They tried and they failed. Most of us have tried many things and failed at them and saw that they didn't work. Next, through the process of trying and failing, they had a breakthrough, and they discovered the secret to success. Then there was a product or a system that was created that solved this problem. Then others used it and succeeded. Ideally, you created this system, you had the breakthrough, you created the product, you give it to the others, and they used it, and they started having success. And then now you can succeed, meaning the prospect or the customer. So for example, let's say I was teaching someone how to lose 20 pounds of belly fat, and I was teaching them how to lose that weight in 90 days. If I wanted to create a compelling conversion story, I wouldn't say I started out as a champion athlete and I was in excellent shape and I've been in excellent shape all my life and then I had an accident and I was unconscious in a coma and I woke up and I had 20 pounds of belly fat. I would try to lose, and I would try to lose it, and then I discovered how I was able to lose the weight. And now I've created a system, and now I'm an Olympic athlete again, and you can use my system to lose your weight. Because there's something about that feels like, wait, that didn't start out there, and I'm not at the Olympic athlete level anymore, but that one doesn't make any sense to me. Now, if there's actually your story there, a way you could present it so that your customer could relate to it, that's the best way. But much better is to start out saying, I woke up one day and I had 20 pounds of belly fat around my waist. And I know for the life of me, I don't know where it came from. It just didn't make sense somehow. It got there, but it was stubborn. I tried all kinds of diets. I tried this one. I tried that one. I tried starving myself. I tried exercising all the time, and I just couldn't lose my belly fat. Then I was talking to a friend, and they shared a tip that it worked for them, and then that's what they found out. I thought, well, what the heck? Let me try it. And I couldn't believe if I started losing a pound a week. And then I started and made some tweaks to the system, and I started losing 2 pounds a week. And 90 days later, I lost all of my belly fat. I took the secret that I've discovered and I turned it into a system. And I created this training program now that anyone can use. I started giving it out to friends and people around me, so they used it and they succeeded. And now I'd like to share it with you so that you can succeed. Now, that was obviously a little rough, but a little bit sloppy, but I was making it up as I was going along here, but using the same formula. But the point is, to each of these elements is something that others can relate to. It's something that your customer would be able to relate to. see themselves in your shoes. It would be something that they're going to do. That something sounds a little bit intimidating. It also raises curiosity. Okay, so it also makes you say, wow, I want to know what is this all about and how do they figure it out? Now let me give you one that might be a little more polished. Okay, this is what I would say if someone asked me to tell a story of my, of say for example, a dating example or dating advice. I would start off and say, I can remember the time in my life when I looked across the room at an attractive woman, and I couldn't go over and start a conversation even though she was smiling and waving at me. I felt deathly afraid. And at one point I got so frustrated, I decided to do something about it. So I went out and started reading books, going to seminars, taking different types of training courses, learning everything I could about dating and relationships. Well, each of the things that I've learned, they just didn't work very well. And I still was horrified whenever I saw that woman, that what I would like to start a conversation with. Then I met a couple of guys and I started spending time with them. These guys were what I call naturals. They were naturally good at approaching women and getting dates. I started watching what they did and noticed that they were doing something that I couldn't have done in a million years. It was completely counterintuitive to the opposite of what I could have done. In fact, they can walk over and start a conversation with a woman and walk away with her phone number, and many times even walk away with a date, with her right on the spot in just a few minutes. So I started trying what I learned, and lo and behold, I started being able to get a woman's phone number within a few minutes of meeting her. After having a lot of success myself, I had my friends ask me about it, so I took up a lot of ideas, I put them together, and I started teaching others, and they started getting lots of dates consistently. I took all of that knowledge that I learned and I wrote a book. I've created this book. Now you can download it online. You can use it to succeed. You can use it to overcome your fear. Approach women and get dates literally in any situation. Now, see here how the story starts out in the position that my prospects is in and evolves it into the position they want to be in, and then it goes further. It also incorporates the real world. Okay, me trying and failing, which almost all of us have done, whatever doing, when we're creating a product or service. And then we had a breakthrough. And then that's really interesting to the prospect of a customer because they want to know what that is, and also creates a lot of curiosity because it's kind of secret information if you don't share it, and you'll be a real leverage for making sales. Then of course talking about how you've had others that have used it and had success, that you've created this system with, that's tested, and now you'd like to help others succeed. It all makes sense. It all presents a little background that makes someone want to buy your product, makes someone relate to it, and ultimately creates a lot of motivation for them to do so. So let's do an exercise. Write your conversion story. The human mind tends to think in stories. Pure information without stories, examples, and application tends to roll off and not stick. Importantly, when you begin to tell a story to the person listening goes into an open relaxation mode, their defenses come down and they begin picturing what you're telling them. Your story is an excellent way to build credibility, trust with your prospect, which are both critical to persuading them to action and buy what you're selling. When creating your story, incorporate elements that your prospects can relate to, indirectly and or directly. The more your story matches the reality, experience, and world of the prospect, the more impact it can have. Use this formula when creating your credibility and your conversion story. So, begin with your starting situation, where you were when you first started, that your prospect has in common with you. It's not you tell them about the story of something else that you've helped. Next, tried and failed. Tell a vivid emotional story of trying and failing. Next is your breakthrough, how you've discovered the secret to success. In this world, often usually happens kind of randomly, and it's very interesting. Next, you've created a system. You've turned it into a method or a product of something that others can use. Next, others did it too. Others used your product or your system, your service, and they got consistent results. In other words, now it's proven, it's tested, and it's refined. And then you can succeed, you can do it. Now I want you to go have success. So, what I'd like you to do now is take this framework here and write out a story and then add color and detail to fill it out. So below, we're going to make an outline or a framework. So write it in the bottom of this exercise, write out the framework for your story that you can add color and detail to fill it in later. All of you want to do here is, all you want to do here is write the 6-part outline of your story. And then you want to go and actually kind of the word process and write out your entire story script so that you can tell it in your person, in your advertisements, in videos, and you can start using it everywhere. One of the first things you can do is when you first meet new prospects is tell them that your story so that you can relate and connect to them on a personal level. They can relate to you as a human being. This will increase the impact of everything, and also you want to start using your story in all of your marketing, all your conversion pieces, because again, it relaxes the defenses, allows the person to start to connect with you and trust and build your credibility, builds influence. So create the outline of your credibility and your conversion story now and add color and detail later to fill it out. And I will see you on the next session. Take care.